Hey, I got a great question in response to my video on paying yourself as an owner a market-based wage. And it's a really important question because it really asks one level deeper than I shared with you. And so in order to protect the asker, because the asker is very explicit about the numbers in their business, I adjusted this. And so let's just review. It's such a helpful thing to think through. So the question is, how would I go about determining what a president and director of operations would be paid in this market for a small business? Notice there's two things there. In this market, small business. In this market is really about in a specific location, in a specific area based on specific set of conditions. And that would be what's the current economy, what's the city, the size of the business, all of that factor into this. So small business, what's that mean? Well, often in small business, it could be a range of things, but in this case, it's a sub-$1 million business. It's a business not making $1 million. We'll finish 2022 somewhere around 600,000 in income with roughly 28% margins. Me, one full-time and two part-time employees. Me as the president, which is full-time, and I believe the 20% owner as director of operations is the other full-time employee, and then there's a couple of part-timers. Websites, books, other comparable companies of all of these. I could send you a whole bunch of places, but it's so all over the place that I'm just going to give you the answer here, and hopefully it's helpful to you as the asker and to you as the one listening in. So let's go through this because I think it's a really good exercise. So how do you figure out a market-based wage for you as the CEO, founder, owner, and if you have a partner involved, 20%, 30%, whatever the number is, 50-50 partners, you got to figure out this number, because if you're going to base it, if you're going to really think through what are the implications to our net profit based on market-based wages, as I've talked about in that original video, you really need to understand this. So how I tend to think about it is to recognize that in startup businesses, smaller businesses, a lot of times founder, CEO, even though that's the business card title, you spend limited amounts of time in that function. The function of a CEO in a larger business is to manage management teams, to lead strategy, to deliver vision, and to accomplish the big major objectives of the company. But in smaller businesses, often you're as an owner operator, you're doing a multitude of things in the business. So I think an approach to that is using a blended approach to figure out your market-based wage. So this is how I tend to think about it. What I want you to do first is figure out the different functions you play, sort of in big, broad buckets. Don't get lost in the weeds on this. And so, for instance, I tend to see a lot of CEOs in smaller businesses sort of being in the 20% range, sometimes 10, sometimes 20, because you don't have enough time to be a CEO in a business. And the CEO just takes a small chunk of your time. And then a lot of in smaller businesses that I see, the founder CEO is often spending a bulk of their time in this role in marketing and sales. And so figure that one out. And then I think a lot of times, because in this particular case, you've said you have an ops manager, my guess is that a lot of times you have to jump into ops to support them, almost like you're an employee of the business. You're replacing the part-timer in many cases. So you're an ops support, and then you're admin finance. You got to look after the books, and you got to make sure the invoices go out, and you got to make sure you're getting paid, and you got to go to the bank, and you got to talk to the lawyers, and all the stuff that you have to do. That's your admin finance function. So once you understand those functions, then the next step is you go out and you get your comparables for those in your city, in your location. So let me just show you how I would do that. So I would do that first by going to Google and, for example, type in general manager of a service company and the salary. And you're going to get a massive range of stuff. But what you want to do is just kind of keep digging in deeper on this. So you want to go, okay, well, Glassdoor says 38 to 94. I don't know why it's showing me Barnstable, Mass, but there you go. Vernon, New York. I'm getting all kinds of stuff. But you can kind of dig in deeper. And you can dig in deeper from the perspective of what's this role look like in terms of salary, in terms of market rate salary. And then you can dig even deeper into what's this role look like with comparable companies, often larger publicly traded companies or larger companies that expose more of their data to the world because they just have more people doing it. So for instance, like if you're in sales and marketing, that's one of the blended functions. Then you're going to go, well, how much experience does this person have? Can I choose an industry? Let's say I go down and I choose, let's choose something here. I'm just going to go transportation or logistics for the sake of it. And now we've got somebody, a sales and marketing manager makes around 85 base pay plus additional pay. So I get those numbers. Finance and admin. Okay, now I'm seeing other numbers. Finance and administration, I've kind of dug deeper in here on pay scale, and I'm getting a 67, 998 a year. So what I've figured out here, and what I'm doing here is I'm doing some research to construct my understanding of the comparables for that particular role, right? That particular role for that particular function in that particular city, state, location, with as much comparable. I would suggest if you spend an hour on Google, you'll figure this out. It's not that hard. The data is out there. It's pretty accessible. So you're basically gonna go out there and find these numbers, and you're gonna come up with, okay, a CEO, a GM in my size company is maybe making 80 to 90. Let's just call it that for the sake of it. Marketing salesperson 70, 45, 70. So I've just kind of made up numbers based on some research. I wouldn't suggest you go to the extreme top of the pile because small businesses generally don't have the capacity to pay top of the pile like a publicly traded company. So a lot of times use the average or somewhat below average just to give yourself a comparable to work with. Once you've got that, then you're going to just actually create the weighted number for your business in terms of this blended approach for your role. So what I did here was show you that I went through, and 20% of 90 is 18K, 35K is what you should be paid for your sales and marketing role. For actually getting paid an hourly wage of 20 to 25 bucks an hour. Say you're in a labor position, you've paid $4,500. Admin and finance, you should be paid 70 for that role, and you ultimately get 14K based on the percentage of your time spending at it. So this blended function comes together, and well, there you go. 71,500 a year should be your market wage salary. Once you figure that out, then go do it for your ops manager. When I think about an ops manager, small businesses, they're wearing a number of hats too. A lot of times ops manager might spend 60% of their time in operations management, managing the operations, and maybe they spend 40% of their time actually being an operator, doing the actual operations as if they were a labor employee in the business, or a frontline employee, or an administrative employee. They're actually doing specific operational activities. So you can do that whole process again, that blended approach for your ops manager partner, 20% partner. Once you've got that, and you then add those two together plus the part-time staff. And I like to think of all of this in terms of unburdened. And by unburdened, I mean there's nothing else in that number except the salary and the potential bonus that comes. No, don't put those extra cost, taxes, retirement stuff. All of that stuff stays out of the equation. Workers' comp, if you all those kind of things that are add-ons, they go in your OPEX number. They don't go in your unburdened staff. Now, once I've got that, I just kind of pull together my CEO estimate. All right, 71.5, 60 for my ops manager, 25 for my part-timer, and 28.5. So once I've got those numbers all figured out, now I have a good understanding of market-based wages for everyone in my company, the unburdened number for that. I know what I should be paying myself. Once I've got that, then I want to go down and recast my net income. And so how I do that is I just do a simple P&L. I mean, you got these numbers. I know you do. You're thinking about them all day. But let's look first at what you did have, the numbers that you sent me. So you said you're doing 600,000. I know nothing else in the middle here, but I do know you said 28,000, or 28% was your net income. So That's cool. That's a great number. That makes, that's an good ego number. I realize that. Um, but it's not legitimate if you're not paying yourself market-based wage, or at least you're not modeling a market-based wage. So if we go back and do this, I've done sort of the new way of thinking, sort of recasting my net income, and I take that 600, and I'm going to assume that you're paying roughly 5% in cost of sale. And if you're in the service business, that cost of sale is, credit card fees. It's fees that you have to pay before you can realize the income. It's not an OpEx number, so that's not tied up there. But let's say we take off that 30, that 5% leaves you 570 as your real gross profit. And that gross profit is the real number of your business. This one up here isn't. If you're in the retail business, obviously you got cost of goods. Your cost of goods and cost of sale together create your gross profit. So let's say you're in the service business and you're grabbing a 95% there. Now we add your market-based, and I'm going to highlight that in red because it's really important. Now we add your market-based wage. We keep everything else the same, just on the bogus numbers that I made up to get to a number. But if instead of paying just your part-timers over here, 52,000, and you're not paying yourselves, and you're just kind of taking this number and doing it as distributions, if we put this in as a real number, forecast, not a forecasted number, actually is a modeled number for your real market-based salary, and we get down here, look at the difference. Here's the major difference, and here's why it matters to doing this right. Because now what you've discovered is your business doesn't have a 28% profit or net income. You've actually got a 5.8% net income. That's not as appealing to your ego. Why? Because it's true numbers. You've actually modeled out the true numbers of your business. And why this is so important is because now you're no longer looking at your modeled financials where they're not telling you the truth. You're now getting the truth about your business. And this, to me, this number up here, which this 5.8% is basically saying that your business in its current format, even though it's new or it's in growth or it's in startup, is not healthy yet. I believe a healthy profit number, if you've modeled out your numbers correctly, should be at least 10%. Pay yourself market-based salary, because that's the one that most owners mess up on. But if you're not making 10%, something's funky in the system. And so one of two things is you have to pay yourself less and use sweat equity to get you there. And that's often a lot of times what people do, but they haven't really accounted for that sweat equity. There's no number associated with that sweat equity. They just say it's sweat equity. And there's accounting, there's mechanisms in accounting, especially in partnership business like you've mentioned, where you can put that into your balance sheet. You can put your partnership or your sweat equity into the balance sheet as a way to hold that to be repaid later, or to get some kind of deferred payment back on that. But it's important to know that number. But now you know, once you've added these market-based wages, that you've got some real clean numbers as to what's going on. And then you can work to repair that so you can get to the place where you can pay market-based salaries, and you can do that and still maintain a profit. Because remember, as you get paid a salary for what you do, you get paid distributions for what you own. So if you and your partner have 80-20, you get 80% of the distribution, but it's got to be real distribution, not pretend distribution, if that makes sense. So I'm telling you that because ultimately this is a better way to look at your business. It's a strategic way. I don't care what you do with your accountant. Ultimately, in the end, I want you to think strategically about your business, and this is the way to do it. So I want to go back to your question. So fix up and make sure you understand your margin. If your margin's funky, it's all funky. You're lying to yourself. Don't lie to yourself with your real numbers. And ultimately, you want to give yourself that understanding so that you can go forward with a real clear understanding of what you need to do to grow your business. And one of the other reasons I believe this is so important to understand is if you pay yourself a market-based wage as you grow your business, now what you're doing is you're actually, as you grow and as you delegate out specific parts of your business, you're actually paying people what they're worth, because you're actually prepared to pay people what they're worth because you've been paying yourself what you're worth. So when you add down the road a sales and marketing manager, an admin and finance manager, and you actually work yourself up in the CE role, you've modeled that out, and now you know where you're going. You know how to manage that, and you've processed that in your thinking. Even if you're just doing this as a modeled P&L for yourself, then you've got some direction to go. So I hope that answers your question. I hope that helps. I hope by listening to this in association with the original video, that this will help you to establish a better way of thinking about your business and how much you pay yourself. We'll talk to you soon.